Welcome everybody to this session. I'm Kate from Superhighways. I'll let my colleagues quickly introduce themselves before I switch to sharing some slides.
Okay, Sorrel. Oh, good. I'm Sorrel. I work at Superhighways as well. I'm a digital advisor there and working on our Data4GoodFest2021 London programme.
And I'm Alice, and I should have turned to the notifications on my phone. And I'm the data and evaluation advisor at Superhighways. And we have with us a couple of people who are here to share about the cohort as well. Charlotte and Katie, do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
I'm Katie Hall from Bromley Third Sector Enterprise. Sorry, Charlotte. One of the members of the DataWise cohort.
And I'm Charlotte Gilsonan, CEO of Bankside Open Spaces Trust, and another candidate on the DataWise cohort.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
And we've got Hannah again. Hi, Hannah. You're on video, which is no problem to us, but just so you know, so you're not frightened, you suddenly realise everyone can see you. And she can hear us.
Okay. All right, I'm going to make a start. So I'll be sharing my screen and running through some slides and just explain what we're going to cover this afternoon. I know we've eaten into your tea break time, I think, but because this is a longer session, we have built in a short break midway through. So everybody can run and grab a cup of tea, stretch their legs and look away from the screen for a little bit. So yeah, welcome to the session, Shaping a More Data-Wise London. So what we're going to do is share learning from our work supporting small charities and community groups to better use data, and just explain a little bit about what we're covering. Quick intro. And then we're going to focus on two elements of the programme. So there's much more to it, but the data essentials session that we've run, which is really the taster, the kind of entry point for small charities to start thinking differently about data. And then after the break, we're going to look at our data cohort programme, and that's a much more in-depth support programme for a small number of organisations over a set period of time, so we can kind of dive in and kind of understand how we can support data maturity for smaller organisations, and are there some tangible results. So you'll see on the agenda there's time for Q&A, but we are encouraging you to add anything into chat as we go along, and then we'll kind of stop screen share and take questions and invite you to kind of join us as well in that space. We will share the slides. In fact, in a moment, we'll drop a link into the chat because we know that the slide view isn't as big as maybe sometimes it needs to be, and we've got some charts and graphs on some of our slides, so we'll share that a little bit later. What is DataWise London? So our mission really is to help unlock the value of data. What we've been doing is improving use of data by small local charities and community organisations so that they can better shape services and influence change, and that's for the benefit of Londoners. So there's a link there to our website as well, where you can find out more about that wider programme. Just a little bit of background in terms of where this came from. So really it kind of two prongs. It developed from previous support projects that we at Superhighways ran. We had a 5-year project called Impact Allowed, and that was really helping that same audience, so small charities and community groups working locally, better capture and communicate their impact using digital tools. And what we soon discovered was that there was a bit of a gap in terms of how they were using data, so the kind of data literacy piece of that. And at the same time, we also did a small project in partnership with others supporting refugee and migrants, looking at their data use. So kind of out of those two projects, we formed this idea, and then it linked also with the Way Ahead initiative. And this was an initiative in London looking at how what support really is needed for a thriving civil society moving forwards. And there were a number of strands of work and research undertaken into those, and I led with a colleague, Leah. I think she might be, I don't know if she's in this space. She now works at Peabody, but we did a kind of bit of a deep dive in terms of data sharing within the sector and what support is needed to get to that point. It's funded by the City Bridge Trust under the Cornerstone Fund. So again, that grew out of the Way Ahead initiative and was looking to fund collaborations and partnership approaches, and also looking to bring about systems change. So we might touch on that a little bit later. So we formed a partnership. So we've got 5 fantastic partner organisations, and I think some of them are here with us today. So DataKind, you've already all met Giselle. So they bring some great data expertise and also a community of pro bono data scientists. Coalition for Efficiency are here as well, and so they bring great expertise around impact measurement and management. And then other partners here and London Plus are really important to the partnership in terms of our reach across London, and Makeable have digital expertise, digital and evaluation expertise. So the 5, there's us leading the project with these 5 partners, and we're also collaborating very much with the GLA as well and their data, civil society data lead there. So we kind of launched the programme October 2019. So we're just about 18 months on from that launch. I did a snapshot of a data dashboard that we've put together. I think I did this on Friday and noticed that it's updated already since. We'll have a look at that a little bit later, but I can say that was definitely inspired by a session that I went to at the last Data for Good festival, hearing from Street League and looking at their Power BI dashboard. So yeah, we've run lots of events, we've engaged with lots of organisations and right across London. But there was a challenge. We knew that we could develop a program and set up lots of training and support offers, but actually the first stage was really about how do we first of all engage with smaller charities to start having those conversations about their data use. How could we inspire them and support them, very often working on a shoestring and without dedicated roles for digital and data. So I'm going to hand over to Sorrel.
Yeah, just for a quick one for chat, actually, for everybody here. If you were just about to embark on a data literacy program for very small and small charities and community organizations, or possibly those that you come across in your work that maybe aren't as data literate as they possibly could be, how would you encourage them to move away from just using data for monitoring to using data to shape services? How would you do that? What would you give them? What resources, exercises, workshops, what ideas would you have to put in their hands to get them started on that journey? So all ideas in chat, and then we'll rob them and use them to create our next program. No, this will be really good just to get the creative ideas flowing. So any thoughts in chat at all? What do you think would work? Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, send them straight to us. Yeah, that's thanks for that. That's a good heads up. Yeah, we should have like sound laughter, I think. Feel free to take yourself off sound if you want to do a laugh. Great, Claire. Talk is about moving away from data purely for monitoring and think about new ways to use data. Thanks, Claire. That is a shameless promotion, but stick a link in chat, and maybe people have a chance to go over and see it. An example of the questions that can be answered. Yeah, that's a great one. What's capable? Yeah, sometimes we don't realize what we can do with it. Amit, thank you. Yeah, what impact they'd want to see connecting to secondary data and ways to integrate their data and context. That's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how do we create data culture and visuals that show the breadth and depth of outcomes? Yeah, and that's the kind of visualizing it, making it come alive, making it real for people so that they can actually explore that information for themselves. So you're absolutely right. Let's go back to what we need, the basic skills we need, and that's spreadsheet skills. My team will know I am not the Excel person in the field. If you've got an real Excel problem, I'm not the one to come to. I'm learning as we go as well. Love it. And Rima, yep, training sessions, yes, to show how easy it is to use. Yeah, brilliant, great ideas. Yeah, Sean, thanks. Yeah, start with the challenges. What's going on? What do they need to get into the bottom of? And see what other people do. Yeah, that kind of case studies and use cases is so valuable and so important. Yes, brilliant. Thanks. Some great ideas coming through in chat. Really, really good ideas. And hopefully we'll show how we've used some of those in practice. Kate, should we move on to the next slide? So we start with a kind of data essentials recipe that we're going to share with you, a recipe for one of our sessions that we run. And our data essentials course, which started off as a face-to-face session, obviously it moved online with the pandemic. It's really the sort of jump start point from which all of our other training sessions come from. So there's a whole series of workshops and one-to-ones and tools that we use that kind of start with this recipe, and that moves around. I'm not going to go through it all, you'll have it on the slides, but we start with asking people kind of, what is data to you? What does it mean to you? So we'll show you what that meant to people in a moment, but also kind of running through some other topics. So we really cover the breadth of how you might be using data, and it includes numbers, it includes the stories, it includes the discovery, and it's looking both at your internal mission-based data and also reaching out for those external data sources and figuring out, well, how do we see everything in context, and how can we analyze these things against each other in a kind of real and practical way for the size of our organization, hopefully to create change. Next slide, please, Kate. And Kate knows, jump in if I miss something.
I was just going to say that we managed to condense that into a 3-hour face-to-face session and then cut it right back for online, didn't we, Sorrel? And then kind of slowly expanded it a little bit more. So I think we're on a 2-hour session for the online version of that.
Yeah. So this first question, we actually use Mentimeter, and we ask everybody at the beginning of Data Essentials, what does data mean to you? And so this word cloud is kind of pulling that information across every single question, every time we've asked this question across those courses. And as you can see, understandably, information and number are jumping out. Now, some of the smaller ones that haven't made it onto this list, because this is set at a max words of 50. If we'd gone up to 70, I think it was, you would have seen things like OMG. Sorry, I'm logged into my phone system, which is a pain. I shall log out in a moment. So even, people would say sleepy, whoa, too much. So we have all of these kind of words coming out, and that's, we find kind of a lot of people's experience of data or what it means to them is sometimes like back to school maths, and sometimes people just didn't have a very good experience of that. So you're dealing with a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety around what data actually is. We also asked them what are the 2 biggest challenges they have, and again you can see some really common problems that we do both in this session, but then with our practical workshops that follow. So whether it's kind of using Excel, we've got an Excel bite-sized series that we deal with some of these issues in. But yeah, people are kind of going, oh, how much, we're collecting data from lots of people, how representative is it? There are vast data sets. What are the GDPR risks? And trying to actually get insights from it. What does, how can we make sense of some of this stuff that we're collecting? Because often people are collecting a lot, but actually what do you do with it? And we asked them to pick their top 3 of what they use data for. So this is collated across all of the Data Essentials sessions. And you can see here, it's really common that measuring outcomes and impact or contract funder reporting is the kind of main aims for what people want to use for it, but actually the predicting user needs or influencing, making a change in their service is not the bigger priority. We run an exercise which looks at the 4 types of data. If you were to look, and I think everybody in this particular space probably knows what those are, but you could go to Inspiring Impact and delve a little deeper into those types. But we say actually against those kind of 4 types of data: user data, engagement data, service data, and outcomes data, what are you actually collecting? And do you kind of know what sort of frequency you're collecting it at? What types, where is it fit? And you'll find as we've run these exercises, sometimes people are collecting data in one particular area, but perhaps not in another, or they've thought we're actually collecting a lot of this, but we're not sure whether it's the right data to show what we really want to do, what we really want to change. So it's a really good exercise to do, and we give them templates and resources to take back to their team. And then we ask them to do, and sadly we can't do this today, but we have some lovely case study examples. So I think that came up in the chat earlier. Case studies, real life case studies, are a great way of helping people get those aha moments around data. And we use a short case study from a carers organisation, young carers organisation, and we ask them, we play the first part of the video that kind of explores what the challenge is, which is this person who works there Alice knows that she has a hunch that people are not attending their service from one part of a London borough to the next, and she wonders why that's happening and what she can do about it, and is it true? And so we ask that question and we say, what would Alice do? What could she go and explore? What would she need to know? And you can see some of the answers coming out here. They start thinking about, actually, well, what are these young people doing? What are their travel links, their bus routes? Do we have postcode data for them? Can we map it? And start thinking about some of those. Is it safe? What time is it happening at? Do we need to go back to our service users and ask them? We also then play the second part of the video and tell them what Alice did do next. So we don't leave them hanging. It is we actually give them the answers too. And we also do a quick quiz with them. So we've been actually the best thing to do to get people to get some kind of understanding of, well, where does their information, where does their knowledge fit with external data, is if you go and explore the external data sources themselves. So we pick one of the easier data sources. It's already been formatted well to help people explore a little bit more easily, because not all data sources, as you'll know, are very accessible for very small groups without a lot of data knowledge. So we give them the London Data Poverty Profile from Trust for London, and we do some quick quizzes. So go off and explore the data to find the answers to these questions. So we build that into the session.
Okay, so that's a little snapshot of some of those components that we've built into the Data Essentials session. We mentioned that a kind of aim of that session was to encourage curiosity, and in the case study exercise where they're really stepping into Alice's shoes, and she talks about having a hunch, so we kind of carry that thread through the session and ask attendees to have a think about articulating their own hunch from their own work. We did this in a bit more detail in the face-to-face sessions, but these are just some, and it's quite interesting that it takes a little bit of practice. It's maybe harder than we'd thought at first for people to kind of put their hunches into words, but just a few examples there on the screen. So these are things that people attending the session have identified during the session that they want to go on and explore further. And what's been great about how we've structured the program is that people are coming to these sessions, but we can provide that follow-up ongoing support. So yeah, here we've got a few. We're not engaging with many young adults in the borough. The services required in Kingsbury and North Brent are different, and we are supporting people from the most vulnerable, deprived wards. So we've got a bit of a structure in terms of how organisations could go on then to investigate further. And we'll hear a little bit more in this part of the session after the break, because we also build this concept into the cohort programme. One of our partners did a little bit of analysis actually She has now left London Plus, but when we were running the face-to-face sessions, we shared all of the hunches that were identified by attendees. And so it's quite interesting to look at kind of where they were sitting. And so we were seeing kind of the simpler hunches, which would require basic skills, but right through to quite complex hunches, which would need advanced skills and support. Okay, so I mentioned our data dashboard. When you get the slides, there's a link within them that you can go and have a look and explore yourself. But just to show you a little bit of data about the numbers of people that have attended Data Essentials sessions. So you won't be able to see the detail, I don't think, but the graphs on the left are showing 151 attendees, and these are people attending our open sessions. So we ran 13 of those, 5 in person, 8 that we've run online. So those were sessions where we administered bookings and promoted any organisation could book to attend. But in addition to that, and I think this is where we were really mindful about how we could broaden our reach. And so what we did was partnered with a range of organisations to run Data Essentials with them for their members or their communities or their areas. So for example, we've linked with lots of CVSs. It's the way we work generally to reach smaller organisations at borough levels. But we've also run sessions with the Evelyn Oldfield unit, for example, and they support much smaller grassroots BA and BR organisations. So we could kind of bring some of the content from Data Essentials and kind of take it out to these other spaces. So there were an additional it was over 100 organisations attending those sessions. So yeah, 260 plus people attending. And when Sorrel showed those Mentimeters, we've kind of collated across all of those sessions. So it's good useful learning for us when we're now looking back at those. And what kind of organisations did we engage with? So we set out to be supporting the much smaller charities and community groups, and it's been really good to delve into the data again. 75% of attendees for Data Essentials were frontline organisations, but we also engaged with infrastructure, and we were really keen to engage with them because again, it's a good way to kind of disseminate out the messages and in terms of comms to reach organisations that they're in touch with. In terms of income, so I've said small, I didn't define that at the beginning, but 60% of the organisations attending Data Essentials have income of under 250,000 a year, and that jumps up to 80% for all attendees have an income of under 500,000. So yeah, we've definitely managed to reach the group, and actually, we're surprised by how many 18% under 10k. There's a few caveats around this data. We didn't collect it right from the beginning. We did a bit of that data collection review exercise and started to collect some more data. And also this will be self-defined on booking. So people have self-selected their income bracket. So we know there might be some discrepancies in that data, but in the dashboard you can have a look. And 58% are local charities as opposed to 30 London-wide and 12% national. Often the national have, it's because they're also doing work at a London level. And what was the feedback like? So we were obviously in a position that we could look at feedback, and then the Data Essentials session was very much iterative, and we kind of made changes based on the feedback. But I've pulled out a couple of quotes. So it's really good to see that people were finding it accessible and easy to understand. We were getting the interactivity right. We were really concerned when we moved it online, how was that going to work? But also a nice quote at the top, it will help us map out our strategies post-lockdown. And then, yeah, thank you for making data fun. So we kind of try and do that. And kind of pitching, really mindful of pitching it at the right level to get those conversations started. And just quickly, we ask quite a lot of questions in the post-session evaluation. So we do ask, what action people are going to go on and do next. But of course, we're never always sure whether that action was taken. So we've just started following up now with everybody that's attended Data Essentials. We've got quite a small response rate so far, so it was kind of an ongoing piece of work, but it is quite interesting to see what actions people did actually take. So that's the question that we're asking. So they did present data in more engaging ways, they analysed their data further, they explored external data sets, they reviewed their organisational data collection. So yeah, it was quite interesting. They took the data maturity assessment, so we kind of introduced that in the session as well. And then we were also interested about any tangible outcomes. So that, you know, we'll be following up with these groups, but groups are reporting back that they have shaped services better as a result. They have influenced, and there's more there that influenced internally than externally, but they've also more robustly evidenced their impact. And then we also wanted to kind of look back at the overarching program goals around shaping projects and services and influencing stakeholders. So we have asked this question both on an individual basis, so recognizing that individuals are coming on this training, so you can see that people are agreeing that it's helped them shape their work and influence, but equally on an organizational level. So we were really focused on not just setting up a program that's going to upskill individuals, but how does that translate to organizational development around use of data. And was it an entry point to the rest of the DataWise London programme? So again, with the follow-up that we've received so far, yes, people went on to book other training sessions. Somebody registered on the data cohort. They're accessing the one-to-one support, attending a data talk. So that seemed to work. And just quickly, before we stop to take any questions, we also wanted to have a look at the journeys that organisations and individuals were taking through the programme. Initially, we had thought about a more formalised kind of curriculum-based programme, but in the end decided to kind of think of pathways through various sessions, and obviously Data Essentials being the beginning one, which linked very nicely through to some other sessions, which then linked to others. So quickly, this is don't think you'll be able to see the detail too much, but it's a CVS. So it's just showing that somebody attended the launch, that person attended Data Essentials, they engaged with a one-to-one with us. And then what that led to was us taking on a bigger piece of work, helping organisationally define requirements for a system, and then choose the best system to meet their needs. And what's led on to that is 13 of their staff are now on our Excel bite-sized programme, because that whole process identified a lack of basic skills around Excel. And we've also gone out and run a Data Essential session in that borough in partnership with that CVS. So at the top, really looking at kind of that journey of being aware they could use data better, exploring, learning about data and data related tools, bringing colleagues along with them. So kind of bringing that data culture, and then kind of data being more at the heart of that organisation going forwards. Another simpler journey. So this is a small frontline organisation working to support children, young people and refugee families. So again, a kind of journey through the programme, attending Data Essentials, also attending data talks. So we invite external data holders to come and talk about their data sources. Ethical and responsible data considerations. We have a session, how to interview your small charity beneficiaries, telling your story with impact. And then last week I did a one-to-one with this organisation looking at the Local Insights data platform. We've taken out a subscription, so we're going to be doing these kind of assisted data explorations, so organisations can book a one-to-one. I think we're at Q&A. Let me stop sharing. and see if anybody's got any questions for us about either some of what we've shown, or you might be thinking about developing a similar program, or taking some of what we've talked about and kind of leading on that internally.
Claire's got a good question in the Q&A about working with funders. And you've skipped out the first bit of your question back in chat, Claire, which I thought was good as well, about funders having responsibility to make sure that organisations know how to use their data if they're going to ask them to report. Do you want to answer that, Kate, about working with funders?
Yeah, funders were one of the initial stakeholders that we identified in terms of us as a program wanting to influence. So not only were we looking at individual organisational level and infrastructure organisations, but also funders to have those conversations. And I guess we're probably still at the beginning of that piece. We have engaged with a number of funders. We have actually got funding from a funder to do a similar piece of work, but pitched at much more grassroots level organisations. So I think that funder recognised and had observed and experienced that organisations they were giving out grants to struggled with this a bit. So there's a support programme they're funding us to run, that's Trust for London. But yeah, what we've done, and we've done this similarly in the digital support work that we as Superhighways do, is starting to try and engage with funders and have that conversation and bring together frontline organisations with funders so they can share their experiences together, and we maybe play a role to facilitate that. We have got a spot at the London Funders Festival of Learning on Thursday, so that's definitely what we're going to be kind of taking there as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? When funders are open to that, it can make a big difference. I remember seeing somebody from Paul Hamlin talking at a conference, and they were saying actually they were really impressed. They were working with the Young People's Organisation, and they'd said, you know, what they loved about them and working with them was that they were transparent with their data and with what wasn't working. So this youth organisation had turned around to them and said, do you know what we came for the money? And we thought we were going to do this. We would have done a good job if it was the right thing, but actually we've just realized it really isn't the right thing, and this isn't going very well, but we know we can still do something about this topic. And are you okay for us to completely change up what we're doing? And Paul Hamlin turned around and said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. You know, the fact that we've had this conversation is enough, and that we have built a relationship with you. And it would be great to see a lot of that in the sector, because, you know, I think that's when the relationship is right, it looks like that, where you're able to turn around and have that conversation. It doesn't mean that that failure is a bad thing, because it's about learning from mistakes. And they tend not to be very serious mistakes either. It's just a program isn't quite shaped the way it was anticipated to be.
I can see that Katie's mentioning about funders and commissioners also need their capacity building, and I think funders versus commissioners are probably two very different kettles of fish, as it were. But I mean, there are some 360 Giving realised and kind of developed a data champions program for funders, so kind of helping people within funders kind of drive forward a more data-driven approach. And I think that was linked to their work around publishing funding grant data in a standardized format, but then realizing that not all funders were at the same level, and kind of picking up on that. But yeah, I think there's definitely some more joint learning that we can probably do together. And yeah, we did engage Lloyds Bank Foundation and kind of, you know, this is where we think this can probably go in terms of working with funders to offer to grantees, as an example. Good
question from Katie. Katie, you can take yourself off mute because you're here. How do you have the difference that you're making to Londoners' lives? But I'm going to let you say that, the rest of that.
I was thinking about, so one of the outcomes I think you said right at the start was that you wanted to demonstrate making a difference to Londoners, not just the organisations you work with. And I wondered how you evidence that.
Yeah, good question. And I mean, that was the overarching goal of the Cornerstone Fund. So, you know, they were looking for the end result to be of benefit to Londoners as being a London-wide programme. And I guess that's where we'll be interested in doing this more longer-term follow-up with groups. So, yeah, we've started some of that, capturing a bit more of the, you know, numbers of people that are doing this, but we'll definitely be following up in terms of stories, because I think, again, that's a nice loop back in terms of it's been really useful for us to have these examples and case studies of what other similar organisations are doing. So if we can build up a kind of body of this, but yes, it's, as any infrastructure organisation in the core will know, it's quite, you know, it's harder, it's more indirect, it's not as immediate either, and it's keeping up that relationship with those organisations, because you're reliant on them to feed back, because you don't have a direct link with those Londoners.
Yeah, I think we're also just starting to review. I mean, generally at Superhighways as an organisation, but it's certainly something to look at Datawise London is almost the phraseology of some of the questions as well. So some of the questions we've asked are things like, you know, what action will you take next, or how will this make a difference to your work? Now that can be interpreted in different ways. Some people may interpret it for their job role, or others, you know, it depends on what the session is as well. But I think there are questions to be asked there around you know, what difference does it make to the communities you serve, and whether we've asked that question in the right way. I think we'd probably, you know, that's something to look back and evaluate as well.
Good question, though, Katie. That's always the hardest
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? Dreaded outcomes of how do you ever prove them? I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment.
But if you want to come on audio and video and jump into our 8 square and take yourself off mute, you're most welcome.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely invite our partners in after the break. I mean, I think we're on time. We were planning a 5-minute break at 3:45. And what we thought we might leave you with is thinking about and sharing what your own hunch might be. So imagine you'd attended a Data Essentials session and we were introducing this concept. What might it be? What kind of small focus hunch might you have that you might want to explore further and use data to prove or disprove? Should we have a 5-minute break, and then we'll start again at 3:50? And yeah, it's great. We're here from 2 organisations. We're here from Charlotte, Katie, and Denise. We'll explain a little bit more about the data cohort programme, and then we'll hear from organisations that are on it. So I might go on off camera.
You need like an intermission slide.
I'll keep dropping it into chat, and I'll do it now. We've got a break. Has anybody shared the link to the slide?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I have.
Cool.
I'm going to put up I'll put up the break slide.
I've been having a proper nightmare. Shall I stay, leave, or?
Yes, because you could contribute in chat even, couldn't you, Denise, if that's a problem?
Oh, and just you can turn off sound.
Can you hear me?
Vision, as it were.
Yes, yeah,
Yes,
we can.
hear you.
Yeah. Looks like we're fine at the moment. Oh, gone.
Can you hear us though? I think that's the problem. Oh, Denise.
No, it's not.
It's not you, baby. It's the connection.
Hi, Denise. We can hear you. You're back.
There's yeses and those, that's me.
You can't hear us.
Because
There's one fatal problem and not be able to see the audience. There's no idea if anyone's in the room again or not. I'm going to reckon that it's 3. Well, shall I give? Oh, that's Kate. Brilliant. Yeah. All right. It's 3:50, so I'm going to start. I hope everyone's back. And let me just slide sharing. Very odd because I can't see any of you now. Okay, so the next session we're going to be talking about the data cohort program which we ran. The data cohort program was a program we ran with 7 small to medium-sized charities in London who were delivering services locally. The concept was we wanted to kind of take them on a longer-term journey of data maturity. So we put together a program, 8 day-long sessions designed to kind of take them on that journey, and then we spread them out over a 10-month period. So we started in September 2020, and we are going to be finishing in June. We kind of ended up spreading it out because of things like Christmas and pandemics and all those other great things that happened this year. In terms of why we wanted to run this program, obviously we work with a lot of small organisations all the time. As you saw from those numbers of people attending, just the Data Essentials, that 260 organisations, we run a huge number of other courses. But we wanted to kind of see what would happen when we actually were involved with organisations over a longer time period. So we wanted to ask some sort of some questions and find out what would work in terms of the program. So we wanted to work out what would it take for a small organisation to kind of adapt and change their data practice, and how far could we take them on that journey running a program that was kind of responsive to their requirements. And we also wanted to test the kind of concept of peer learning. The data cohort members, we've got 7 of them join the data cohort, of which we have Denise and Katie from Bromley Third Sector Enterprise, and we have Charlotte from Bankside Open Spaces, who are going to talk about the programme from their perspective. I'm going to quickly run you through the setup of the programme and how we kind of went about designing it, and then I'm going to hand over to them, and you can hear it from the horse's mouth about how it went. In terms of running the program, we used our partner organisations as mentors. So we set up one-to-one relationships between somebody in one of our partner organisations and one of the organisations on the program. And the concept of that was that they could use their mentor as a kind of sounding board, really, to help them through the process. We also decided to use a tool called Makeable to give us a space to be able to share progress, to chat, to post resources, and to record learning within it. And then we kind of set around, once we got to who was joining and what tools we were going to use, we set about putting together a program framework. So our program framework, it revolves around this kind of 5-stage journey. So going from a discovery stage, kind of understanding what your organisation is doing, what data do you have, where is it, who enters it, all of that sort of stuff, through to learning how to actually use that data and actually be able to analyse what it means, through into analysing it and using external data sources, and then on into, once you've kind of analysed it and presented it, you can present it to people so you can talk through what you found, and then how to use those findings to be able to shape your service delivery based on your findings. And then the last kind of piece of that process, which is meant to be a cycle, is that you repeat it all over again. So the last session is all about kind of feeling confident to be able to do it again. So building sort of data cultures within organisations and getting buy-in on an organisational level. So obviously we had a concept of what our framework should be, but we didn't want to actually just tell people what they needed to know. We wanted to hear from them what they would need to know. Oops, sorry, I went to flip these slides. Right, okay. So we co-designed the programme. We did that using the data maturity assessment, which I will talk about in a minute, by goal setting from the participants. We got them to define hunches. We talked about it, obviously, all of us together in sessions, and we got the mentors to input as well into the process of designing the actual programme. In terms of the data maturity framework and the assessments we run, it's the Data Orchard, the data maturity framework. They have the assessment tool you can use. It takes 20 minutes to do. They have a free one for 5 minutes, which is really worth trying. Our participants all did the longer 20-minute one. They either did it as a team, all answering together, or they did it individually, and then the results were collated back together by Data Orchard. And the concept of the tool is that it takes all of those answers from the questionnaire, and on using the 7 key themes of data maturity, it sort of plots where people are on this journey between being unaware and mastering everything there is to do with data. In terms of the scores, these are just the kind of overall scores of the organisations and what they scored, and they're breaking down into different topics, but these are the kind of the ones which compiled back up together. This was, we thought this was a good idea because it would give organisations a base point in order to be able to say, well, this is where I started and look, this is where we got to. We found it interesting as well just to see how subjective it was, how differently people within one organisation answered, how differently organisations came up against our expectations of where they would be. So that was very interesting to see. In terms of building content from this, we drilled down a bit further and we looked at their strongest and their weakest areas in order to ascertain where we get the most, what they would get the most benefit from. So you can see here, these are the strongest areas coming out of the data maturity assessment. So uses, culture, leadership, and data. Everybody scored themselves pretty high on those. But the ones that were the weakest, tools, everybody said that, analysis and skills. So those are the three kind of key areas which we decided to focus on as a result. We also use their goals to help us determine the content. So I'm not going to read through them all, don't worry, but we basically just ask people to sort of say what they would like to achieve, come up with 4 or 5 goals, link them to the data maturity themes, work out what they needed to do in order to achieve those goals, and identify what they needed from us to help them achieve those goals. And then we compiled all of those goals back up so we could see, well, which goals are hitting multiple organizations. So for instance, outcomes, the theory of change, lots of people had that as something they were interested in. So that was one of the things we included in a session. So there's a lot more. I've just got a snapshot of the top ones. We also use the hunches, which Kate talked about, and Sarah talked about earlier. So this is Home Starts hunch, for instance, about families not knowing where they are, that they're there, so they're not getting help. With the hunch, we asked them to define kind of what data they thought they needed to answer that hunch, to delve into it, what tools they needed, and what skills they needed. And again, we use those to inform our content, and then we use the hunches to help to work so that participants could work through what their hunches within the program itself. In terms of the final topics, we then dropped into our framework the topics that we wanted to cover. So you can see it's a mixture of things, starting off with kind of goal setting and building, defining hunches and things, and then into actually looking at data, mapping it, visualizing data, and then ultimately coming out and showcasing results. So I'm going to hand over to Katie and Denise from Bromley Third Sector Enterprise, and they're going to tell us about how they got on. Sorry, that's a whirlwind tour. We're aware we don't have much time.
Thanks, Alice. Denise is going to start if she's there. I'm not sure she is there.
Oh, I can't see, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'll start then.
Real good.
Oh no, there she is.
Yay.
Are you there, Denise?
Okay, I'm not sure we can hear Denise. I can't hear her.
Can you hear me?
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Oh, she can't hear us.
Oh, I don't think you can hear us.
No.
Okay. I'll pick up the baton.
Oh, you
and
did.
Then Denise.
Time to learn.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you
I
want to
also
start?
can't see the slides.
Okay, we're on slide 1, the intro slide.
Can everyone else see the slides?
Yes.
I asked anxiously.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
I want to.
Do you want me to
made some notes. So,
yeah, do you want me to do
so
it, Denise?
hi, everybody.
Oh, we've lost her again, I think.
Just stop me if I go. The starting slide, which will be a picture of.
I think you're dropping in and out a bit for me, Denise.
Yeah. Katie, I think you're going to have to take
I'll
over.
pick it up. I've got it. So Bromley Third Sector Enterprise is a very small organisation in Bromley. There's only 5 of us, 3 of us are part-time, and we manage a huge contract of Bromley primary intervention and health services called Bromley Well. We support around 15,000 clients a year across a range of services, but we wanted to focus on Bromley Third Sector Enterprise, and for us that's been a key distinction to have made during this programme because we have data at lots of different levels. So one of the kind of big things for us was taking a step back from Bromley Well and service delivery and looking at Bromley Third Sector Enterprise. Initially, we wanted to think about building on a baseline data position that we'd developed and thinking about how we demonstrate performance and impact over longer periods of time, and think about how we inform service design. And then also we're going to be recommissioned the services very soon, so we want to inform contract discussions over the next year or so. And then we also wanted to think about how we evidence social and economic impact of our prevention services, which is always a big challenge when you do prevention delivery. So if you could move on, Alice,
Yeah.
2 slides, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying 2 slides.
Perfect. Thank you. This is about Bromley-Well, so that's what I've just covered. So we can go on to the next one. That's great. So what have we done? Well, we have attended all but the final DataWise session, which is next week. And the learning cohort days have been really wonderful, kind of positive experiences. It's been a very supportive group. It's been really well led, and kind of encouraged us to reflect, talk to each other, be a safe space to come together and think about some of these questions, and not feel like an idiot for not knowing things, and to be able to ask questions and learn comfortably, and build our skills. We completed the data maturity assessment, which I'm going to show on our next slide. I've also been able to attend additional training, so things like the Excel bite-sized sessions that have been spoken about, in particular with a focus on data analysis and visualization, but also reporting and impact. We've got to know, which we really needed to know, about the external data sets that are available out there, and how to use them, and that for us has been a key factor in build sort of how we've used the program and applied it in our work. But also, as I said, alluded to earlier, thinking about the different levels of our organisation and prioritising BTSE rather than Bromley-Well, and that is reflected in our hunch, which I'll come to. And the other kind of thing we've done is learn lots of new tools like Makeable and Theories of Change and Jamboard, so practical tools and theoretical tools that we can take away and bring to our own organisation. And then we've also audited our data collection systems and processes, because it would be quite easy just to say, right, we use Charity Log and that's that. But actually, if you sit down and think about it, there's so many more systems at play, from the website through to various spreadsheets and different tools. So it was really good to sit down and build that list and see it for what it is, so we can see how we might be able to streamline our software. Okay, next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty. So this was our data maturity assessment. We did it as a team of 4 or 5 of us, and I think we all came out with quite similar responses, which was helpful. And really what the picture showed to us was we're keen to learn, and keen to know more, and have the desire, but not necessarily the capability. So it was a good point to say, right, we know we want to do something, but we don't know what that is. And in that sense, the DataWise program came along at the right time for us, because we'd just done a major benchmarking exercise, and we thought, okay, we know some things. How do we prove some of our hunches? How do we take it forward? How do we demonstrate what we do so that we can get recommissioned and or go for other contracts in different areas and things? So really, we wanted to know what data could do for us. Next slide, please, Alice. So our hunch doesn't go down to a granular level like some organisations did. We took the opportunity to step back, and so it's quite a strategic hunch, which is that we know we're not using our data effectively, and we could tell commissioners and prospects much better how we support clients, how efficiently we operate, and what future demands there might be for our service, but also other services similar that could run in other boroughs. And that helped us think through, we don't just need a theory of change, but we also need a hypothesis of change. So to kind of create a model or a framework where we can look at Bromley Third Sector Enterprise as the contract holder, and then have a range of services underneath it that would all have their individual theories of change. And we thought about the kind of data we needed is making better use of our existing data. We collect an awful lot of data on how we support our clients, but we're not using it. Additional data that we're not collecting, particularly around equalities and diversity. A really big area for us was thinking through, as I've said, the economic and social return on investment, which is about using data outside of our organisation, and thinking through benchmarking our performance and our support of clients against borough demographics, and thinking through what our current KPIs are and what gaps there are. So some of it was about data we had, and some of it was about data we don't have. And then we looked at, I won't go into the detail the next bits, but we looked at kind of what tools might help us support that and what skills we might need. Next slide, please. We can whiz through these. So this is an example of some of the external data sets that we've looked at, and looked at like a Bromley Borough profile, so we can map who we're supporting and whether we're really reflective of the community in Bromley, so we can see trends on how Bromley's demographic is changing, and it's particularly got an ageing population, so we can think about whether the Bromley Wells services will continue to meet the needs of the borough in time to come, and whether, more importantly, there are gaps and we're not meeting some needs of some borough residents. The next, I think not the next one, but the next one, please, Alice. Thank you. So these are some of our quick wins. So we've used external data sets that we've gone through in the sessions and with some one-to-one support. And it's, for example, helped us inform not to go for a tender. And that was because we understood the borough demographic and need, and realised that the tender wasn't enough to meet the needs of the borough. So it's been really interesting how we've used that data. We've audited our systems and realised there's a lot more systems in play than I originally anticipated, and I need to think through how we're going to streamline some of those. We've started to develop a hypothesis of change that will work a step above our theory of change models that will hit the different services. We've made changes to our database, and particularly driven an improvement in data collection around consent and equalities and monitoring, which are key to our service provision. We're in the process of recruiting a new data and comms system post that's going to support some of this work through the Kickstarter programme. We are developing our current KPI reporting to a more visual approach and a whole service perspective, because at the moment it's broken down by individual, like 15 individual services, which isn't always that helpful. We are running a data culture workshop with Superhighway's input for frontline staff and managers on the 24th of May. And we've stepped up our game in terms of data collection, and that's really influenced our Excellence for Carers Award submission. We weren't doing a lot of things that they required, and so through DataWise, we've identified where some of those gaps are and put them into place. And we're going to facilitate a hunch session with the board, our board, next week. Next slide, please. So our next steps are thinking through impact reporting, and Denise has started some of this. So how do we tell the story of what we're doing and the change we're making in the borough? We are going to do an economic, try and work with pro bono economics to get an economic return on investment model. I'm going to do a systems mapping for using the Lucid chart tool. We are going to develop consistent outcomes across all the pathways that we offer, as well as tailored outcomes. We're going to invest in Power BI and integrate that with our charity log database so that we can do some much more visual and real-time dynamic reporting. We're going to hopefully inform the Bromley Well recommissioning process and update the KPIs, and continue to embed data culture. And I think that's me done, probably.
Totally brilliant. Thank you, Katie. You've done so much. I can't believe you've done that much in such a short period of time. Amazing. The next slide is the any questions slide, but I'm actually going to click on through and let Charlotte go first, and then we'll come back to questions if that's okay. Or there's a how to contact slide in there as well. Charlotte, are you
Yes.
there? I can't see anything, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thanks, Alice. I have got an issue though. My slides have got stuck in the middle of one of Katie's previous slides, but I do have my own copy of slides. So what I'll have to do is go through my own slides, which are identical to yours, but I won't be able to see the screen at the same time. So you'll just have to keep up, if that's okay.
Do you want me to go back and find that rogue slide? I didn't spot it, I'm afraid.
No, it's fine. It's just that for some reason on my computer they've stuck. I've got a problem. I think it's lack of internet access or something.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Oh, I see. You. It's all right. I thought you meant I dropped one of your
No,
slides.
no.
I was taking
No worries, it's at my end. So apologies everyone, and hopefully this will flow okay. Great, so I'm Charlotte, I'm CEO of Bankside Open Spaces Trust. We are an environmental and volunteering charity. We have, in a good year, a turnover of around 800,000. We have 12 full-time equivalent staff on board and around 700 volunteers a year. So we're a kind of small to medium-sized charity, I would say. Most of our staff are part-time, but as I say, we've got 12 full-time equivalents. We were established in 2000 by a group of local people. We're a community-focused charity working across North Lambeth and Southwark, and in fact, when we were set up, it was a vital time for the area where there was lots of developments happening. There was a lack of green space, people were encroaching on that green space, and so it really was set up as a campaigning group to ensure that local spaces, community spaces and outdoor spaces were protected. Today we work closely with local communities, residents and businesses, and volunteers are our lifeblood, and they help us to create and protect over 45 parks, spaces and gardens. So why DataWise? Why did I come onto the programme, and why was it good for BOST as an organisation? Well, before I came on the programme, we were collating various pieces of data with little or no consistency across our projects. We realised we needed to do more, but actually what we were doing was responding to funders and also collating data for our annual review with little much else happening. So even though we realised we needed to do more, it was lack of capacity and, you know, time challenge and finance challenges. We also had a CRM system. We had Salesforce in place, which we wanted to use both for relationship management and as a database, but that was on hold. We were struggling to demonstrate impact or use our data wisely. And as I mentioned, we were under-resourced, but we did realise we needed to improve. So when the opportunity for DataWise came along, I was really keen to get involved. And I think it was important for me to get involved as chief executive of the organisation to ensure that it was something that we could continue to develop throughout, that I could liaise effectively with trustees and with staff, so it became part of the culture of the organisation. Had I got staff with more capacity or more availability, I'd have happily asked them to join me as well. But I think, you know, it was a challenging time, particularly due to COVID, with many staff on furlough. And so I took up the opportunity myself. Because of the nature of working in a small charity and the variety of different roles you end up being engaged in, I really needed to look at trying to gain additional funding as well, alongside what I was doing to help us move forward effectively. So we managed to secure funding from the School for Social Entrepreneurs to develop a monitoring and evaluation framework and theory of change. And we are currently working with the Centre for Efficiency and Angela, who I think is actually here today, to help develop that for us. So I think we're in a position now really where we know what we want to do. We're still challenged to do it. So we need to bring in additional resource where possible. And we're very fortunate to have received some funding to enable us to do that. We've got all our volunteering information, so all our sort of questionnaires, reviews and data now fully implemented on Salesforce. And we've completed our first year in review. Some of the challenges I mentioned earlier, obviously the course started in September last year, which was, you know, in lockdown. 70% of my staff at the time were on furlough, with staff gradually coming back part-time, and there were constant changing government guidelines. Everyone was remote working, and we're adapting our services really in order to continue to deliver. It was important for us that we could continue, because looking after parks and open spaces was absolutely, you know, essential during lockdown. People were accessing them more, if anything, and really it was so important for the health and well-being of each individual. Loads of benefits on the programme. Firstly, it was free, which small charities is a huge benefit. And obviously there's no barrier then to accessing the programme. We had monthly training sessions, which are really useful. So we you know, it wasn't over a few days where information could then be forgotten, but it was actually monthly, carries on until June. So it's been over a fair period of time. And one of the things that's been really effective was that the workshops were actually integrated into the delivery. So rather than just learning about what we needed to do or how to do it, we're actually actively involved in getting it done. And when time is short, that was really useful for us as well. And we're all matched up with a personal mentor. I was matched up with Angela, some of you might know, from Centre for Efficiency, who has been absolutely instrumental in supporting me to move forward throughout the sessions. And the information and training that we received actually was anything from straightforward to fairly complex. So really, the more input that you could have in the program, the more you would get out of it. But even if, you know, you weren't able to put so much time into it, there was still a fair amount of change that you could implement in your organisation. And a huge range of experts actually delivering training on the program. So you've met some of them today, but also there are additional people that were brought in for specific sessions. So now we're using our impact or our data much more effectively, and, you know, not just for funding applications or to demonstrate the need for our kind of work, but also really to improve our program delivery and to demonstrate our impact across the board. So now, for example, we're thinking about how we can demonstrate what we've been doing over COVID and what impact it's had really for Londoners. So just an illustration here really. Since the start of COVID, park use in London has increased by 160%, and we know that 44% reported visiting green spaces more since the start of lockdown, with 59% reporting that lockdown has made them more aware of the importance of green spaces for mental health and well-being. And 62% of those living in London think protecting and enhancing green spaces should be a higher priority. So this kind of information is really vital. With funders, it's vital for us to be able to demonstrate the need and, you know, the need for what we're doing as well. Okay, the other thing that we've managed to do, so rather than having a list of kind of pieces of data, we've put together our achievements. So for 1920, we put together almost like a year in review on a one-page document that we can put on our website, we can share with our key stakeholders, and utilize in a variety of different ways. So we're kind of trying to illustrate it and make it much more interesting for people to engage with as well. And then another example of what we've done is we've put some of our parks and spaces on a map. This is partway through, in fact, but what the next stage is for us to be able to click on to one of those spaces, for example, the Tate Community Garden, to find out how many people are working there, and then look at other data as well. So some of the local data that's attached to that as well. And finally, I mean, what's next? You can see that we've kind of dabbled in lots of different areas. What we really want to do is to bring it all together, but rather than sort of finalizing one thing first and then moving on to something different, we've actually got involved, I've got the organization involved in a variety of different ways of using data. So Salesforce at the moment, we've brought it back on board. We've got all our volunteering information on the system to date. Our next phase is to do the same with our sports information at the Marlborough Sports Garden, and then we'll gradually ensure that we get all our projects and all the information, all the data onto Salesforce so that we can actually generate data across the board. We're looking to be able to compare the data we have with external data so we can draw comparisons. So we can look at whether we're reflective of the local community, for example, by looking at the data across our volunteers and comparing that to demographics of the local community. Look at how we're contributing to improving biodiversity across the area and how we compare to other similar organisations. So those are just some examples of our next steps here. And then we're looking also to identify universal outcomes across all programmes, which will help the organisation with strategic development, help us to report effectively to trustees, and look at identifying robust KPIs across all our programmes, incorporate them into strategic plan and design a trustee report to enable them to see how we're improving year on year. Okay, so that's just a bit of a snapshot of some of the things that we've achieved from the programme. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was really interesting. There's a slide in the deck for Bankside Open Space Trust as well as for Bromley Third Sector Enterprise. So if anybody wants to know more, I'm sure you can get in touch with Charlotte or Denise or Katie to find out more. I'm going to stop sharing and then we can go into Q&A. Love stop sharing. Yes, good. It's hard when you can't see anything, you know. Right.
Do any of our partners that are here want to join us? We've got another, I can't do my maths, for another 4 spaces on the screen. I think we can have 9. So yeah, do join us.
And in the meantime, I'll take the most upvoted questions. So Rima, thanks for that one. How would one sign up to the Data Essentials or Data Cohort series? So all of our Data Essentials sessions are, they're fully funded and they're open to all. So we have run them in either locally within boroughs or even online where we've been invited in to deliver them for particular topics of interest. So it might be a group of young people's organisations, might be a network of organisations, but generally those sessions are open and they can be accessed by any small charity or community organisation. They just have to tick, as you might have seen on the data sheets earlier, a little bit about them in terms of their scale and scope, and they have to tick that they're in London. The data cohort was a relatively simple and straightforward, I hope the groups would agree, application process. So the data cohort, we did ask sort of more in-depth questions about where they were at and what they wanted to get out of the programme in order to kind of most of those came onto that programme. There are a few that we supported differently and in other ways because they, for example, they just wanted to focus particularly on one system rather than looking at the kind of broader use of data.
I think that application process was important, Sorrel, because it gave us a chance to think, where are we at? What do I want to achieve? What's our priority? And then we all sort of know when we come into the cohort, we're in a similar-ish position. So it was useful to have thought about that before we started.
Thanks, Katie.
More generally, sorry, I was just saying, just more generally, Rima, in terms of signing up for things, the DataWise London website link is in there, and there's a page called training that links through to the Eventbrite page, and there's lots of things up there. If you don't spot something, you can look back through past events. You can always get in touch with us as well if you're interested in a particular area. So our contact information is on there.
One thing just to add in terms of the sign up for the cohort, as kind of organisers, it is something that we have, and with discussions with mentors as well, thought that we would review maybe before running that again, and kind of have a think and maybe even include some pre-sessions, so that we could bring people up to the same level if somebody has a theory of change and somebody doesn't, kind of run a pre-workshop, for example. But yeah, we kind of did it in quite a slightly rushed and quite open way, I think, in terms of people expressing interest and making the case for why, as an organisation, they should be accepted onto the programme and what they were really looking to achieve.
I think maybe the next question we'll take from Anonymous. How did you set up the mentorships and how did you find them, match them? That's a good question, and we've got mentors here, so that'll be a nice one to pick up on next.
Essentially, we were lucky because we had a range of partners within the programme, so we didn't need to look outside of those partners. So we had a look at those goals that organisations were setting, and then kind of it just seemed to happen naturally. That might not always be the case, but I'll let Angela and Antonia share a little bit about their experience.
Yeah, I think for me it was, so we had an overview of all the different organisations in the cohort at the beginning and what kind of support they were looking for. And then I think between us as mentors, we kind of selected the organisations where we felt we could make the most difference or where we could provide the most support. So for me, that was Bangsat Open Spaces Trust. So I've been working with Charlotte over the last half year or so. And I think what worked really well was that in Boss' case, I mean, Charlotte had a very good idea of what kind of support she needed. And things that she needed to park for a while that just weren't such a priority. So we were quite quite efficient in just sort of picking up where the gaps were, maybe where she wanted a bit of feedback, and then sort of worked our way through that. And I think that worked really well. Also, Charlotte being the CEO, and obviously having an oversight of the entire organisation worked really well. Because we could then sort of look at specific projects, but also have that kind of overall strategic overview and knowing where she was heading with the organisation in terms of the impact measurement. So it was quite an organic process.
I would also add that as well as having a nominated or designated mentor, all the partners have been incredibly approachable and generous with their time, and we've been able to have one-to-ones with mentors who weren't our mentor, and have supported us. So there's so much expertise in the partnership, and that's really for me where the strength is, kind of being able to pick and choose who to ask for help, and everyone being very generous and kind with their support.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to what Katie was saying, because the mentee I was matched to just was overwhelmed with work and had to drop out of the Friday cohort sessions. So we had a couple of conversations, and I think he was definitely very engaged and enthusiastic about data and impact, but just had to press pause on that. So I only ended up having one session. But then the sort of Superhighways team were really good at pulling us in. So I had a couple of sessions with Katie and Denise. And then we actually brought in one of the volunteers from our volunteer pool, who was really sort of well matched and not able to give much of her time. But I think that session we had with Lisa, Katie and Denise she came up with some really good ideas. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'm having a session to review a theory of change from another organisation who was part of the cohort. So yeah, I think we weren't expecting that when we came up with the idea of the mentor matching, but we've been able to be quite flexible, and so yeah, it's worked quite well.
Yeah, that's
I think
go on.
Sorry, I was going to say the shortage of time is quite typical, especially now within the charity sector, and people sort of trying to grasp at so many different things, do so many different things at the same time. But I think what's really helped me as well, because I haven't been able to attend all the programs, is the follow-up notes, but also having a mentor who's kind of encouraging me to still meet up with her, and it kind of gets me in the zone and makes me think about what else I need to do, and helps me kind of motivate myself to keep moving forward.
Brilliant, thanks. I think I know we're kind of we're quite tight on time. Hopefully we'll have an extra few minutes, Sarah. I'm going to
question from Tracy in there, isn't there?
I think that's a great one, because it's still kind of on the same topic, so that's the next upvoted. So to the organisations that took part, did you learn from the other organisations that participated in the data cohort?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the key I think benefits and positives of the program, is the same, in general, the same group of people, a regular core cohort meeting monthly, so we got to know each other, we can see each other's development and progress, but also everyone had different experiences of different things, so we could share our use of tools and different systems, for example, how it had gone implementing things. There's a lot of time for reflection built into things, and then also just doing different exercises with different cohort members. You just get to learn a little bit about how other charities are doing different things, and that's absolutely been, like, for me, a crucial part of the learning process.
Brilliant.
Charlotte, I can't tell if you're coming off mute or just nodding.
I to agree, because I know we're short on time.
Excellent. Are there any questions?
I was just going to make a comment. We're used very much to running training, so we really had to force ourselves, and we kind of learned over the program as when we were structuring it, to build in time for reflection and just discussion, and not feel that we needed to fill every 20-minute block. So that's because we could see the value kind of looking in on it, I think. So that was some learning for us, running the program, build in more time for networking and general discussion, rather than always kind of leading and focusing.
There's an interesting one from Tracy, so we'll pick up on that question. What was our assessment of organisations' data maturity? Was ours the same as the organisation? I'd say we based this on self-reporting rather than, I'd say, observing where we thought they might be. So it's a very kind of co-designed, structured program around that idea, I'd say, Kate, rather than which it might have been an interesting question. I think if we were to run the cohort again, whether we would also do some additional benchmarking, I don't know. And
I think Alice will probably have something to share, in terms of perception. And she mentioned, she'd noticed that that the subjectiveness we didn't do that prior either. We could have done that as a kind of, before we accepted people on the program. We did that literally in the first session, I think. So it was part of the session rather than pre. So again, that might be something that we kind of review and reflect on.
Yeah,
I think we also did it, didn't we? Super Highways did it, and that was quite funny too. We actually scored really quite low, considering we're all meant to be experts. So I think it is very subjective. That it's sort of that the more you know, the more you realise you don't know, I guess, is the thing with those with the assessments.
But I think wherever you are, the kind of shape of the where would probably remain the same. And Cian might have something, or might have shared something. Wasn't able to come to your session. Cian's asked us a question, actually. I don't know if we've very quickly got time, 1 minute. What have you personally loved most about the project, each of you? I'll go to Sorrel. Put Sorrel on the spot. if Cian's meaning it for all of us, yeah.
Across the whole project, I think actually the passion for the discovery of data. I mean, it's unbelievable how many. It actually falls in with Rima's question about everything seems to be booked up, and they just fly off the shelves. And I think at this difficult time that we're in with COVID, the fact that data's had some kind of leeway within that, or that there's a real desire to start to kind of get to grips with it and follow up on that and do something about that is really exciting. And that we've had volume. We haven't had to encourage. We're not phoning people up saying, where are you? We need to have more people on these training sessions. People are there and they're with us, and they're coming back and they're returning, and that's a really special thing.
Just in terms of Rima's thing about what do I do, because all the sessions are full, and I see someone else like that. Just sign up anyway on Eventbrite. Claire, who organises all of our lives at Super Highways, is brilliant about making sure, if a spot comes free, somebody from the waiting list gets bumped up. It helps us identify demand, or who wants to be on what courses. So do sign up, and I'm sure we'll be having more sessions coming out soon as well.
I'm going to very quickly share my. I think what I've loved the most is seeing the really tiny groups at the very beginning of their journey, kind of seeing the penny drop, and suddenly this kind of real enthusiasm for looking at data differently. That's probably my favourite bit of the programme. I don't know, Angela and Antonia, if you've got anything to.
I think for me, it's been being able to support so practically as well. Being able to just sort of point them in the direction of some resources that it's just what they needed at that one point, or being able to give quite practical feedback that they could then, for example, the one-page visualization that Charlotte shared that was something that she showed me at some point, and I just gave a bit of feedback, and you know, there was that was something that I could very practically help with. So I think that's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, similar to Angela, although my experience as a mentor has been more light touch. And I would just also add that I've been building my knowledge and skills as well through the DataWise program, and helping to fill some of the gaps that we had within our sort of measuring the good approach. And it's just so useful to be able to have something to signpost organisations that we work with too. So.
And I think it's something that we haven't really touched on too much, but the learning across the partnership, we've captured it, haven't we? But how as a partnership we've worked together, and we've all got our different strengths. And yeah, at that partnership level, everybody's been very generous in sharing and supporting the work going forward. I think we are out of time now. Thank you everybody who's joined us. We can't see you, but thanks for contributing in chat. We hope you've got lots out of the session. We will be sharing. You're going to have the recording, but yeah, check out the DataWise London website, and I might just drop I haven't got the link to the slides on my clipboard. I've got something else.
It's in the chat.
It's in the
somewhere.
chat already.
Yeah,
okay.
Right at the top.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, I'm not sure if there are any sessions left or whether it's kind of networking time, but hope you've had a great day today, and more data for good sessions tomorrow. So, and thanks very much, Katie, Charlotte, and Denise, if you're still there. Thanks for contributing. It's really brought to life.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Take care, everyone. I think it's over to the main stage.
Main stage.
See you soon.
Bye.
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 Thanks so much. Bye.